I don't know if you can, now. I don't know if you could hear me, but actually, I'm lucky today to introduce my two good friends, or actually one really good one, and one we kind of drank together, so it's good. Um, but supposedly they're from the two best accelerators, so I hope I have some right questions to ask if they're actually from the two best accelerators. So I would like to introduce Max and Marvin. Max is from Techstars and Marvin from 500 Startups. So hi guys, how are you feeling after yesterday? Well rested?
Good, yeah.
Good.
I saw you leaving around 12, so you looked quite rested.
I'm a professional.
Since when? So I have, we kind of know each other. We have talked about what you guys are doing. And I think a lot of you guys know a lot about accelerators, incubators, coworks. So how about I ask you a bit more of a challenging question, which is, I kind of did my research, which is funny enough, and it seems that only actually about 2% of successful exits from startups were actually coming from that they had a background in Accelerator. So why do you guys think that anyone should go through Accelerator if the percentage is so low?
Oh, great question.
Max?
So generally, I actually encourage quite a lot of companies not to go to an accelerator. About 80% of Series A companies in the US last year had not gone through an accelerator. So that means the vast majority of companies don't. And so they don't necessarily need to. I also encourage quite a lot of companies not to take VC money as well. So I'm quite kind of contrarian. And so, if you're a spectacularly good entrepreneur who can bootstrap their company and grow it to a stage where you can exit, that's fantastic and a great route to go. And actually for this region, there is some real benefit for companies to go through an accelerator. There is exceptional talent here, technical talent. But one of the things that was said earlier on the kind of Sovietization of your mindset, there is still some residual lack of commercial knowledge. So one of the benefits of getting on a plane and going to 500 Startups, which is fantastic, Accelerator, or any of the Techstars ones, is that you kind of get that commercial knowledge and you get access to a new market. So I think for this particular region, and it's an area I love, because there is so many smart people here, I actually think there is some benefit, but I also highly encourage companies not to go into an accelerator if they don't want to and don't see the value.
Yeah, my take in general is just you join an accelerator because there's some specific sort of like need that you think the accelerator can help you with, right? And if the same situation, we are seed fund and an accelerator, so I talk to companies for both reasons. And a lot of times I don't push the accelerator on companies where you're telling me that you have this issue, and for us it's like you have a sales and marketing issue and really don't understand customer acquisition, but you seem to sort of have everything else under control. Maybe this would be a good place to sort of learn this. But if you just basically want our money and you know what you want to do, then just take our seed money and don't do the accelerator. So my take is it's almost like university, right? Like you pick and choose sort of depending on what your interest is. You pick and choose depending on what your specific sort of like need of your company or yourself as an entrepreneur. I think as well too, the best entrepreneurs, like even the ones who join our accelerator program, an accelerator is not going to be a fix-it for you. Like I tell folks, like most of the companies and most of the entrepreneurs who join our programs would figure this stuff out eventually. The only difference, we shorten the amount of time that they would figure it out, and that's it, right? Like we can't go and turn something that's crap into sort of like chocolate, right? And so most of the folks that we take in anyways are pretty good. We just help them move faster.
So you're saying you help them move faster, but at the same time, only 2% of the best 20 accelerators in the world have the startups have successful exits. So how is that correlation?
So on that, so one of the things, so we've got more than 1,000 companies gone through Techstars. 10% of them have exited, and 10% have failed, and 80% are still functioning. The fact that only 10% have exited is just a fact that actually accelerators are relatively new.
Yep.
So our expansion happened primarily in the last 3 years. We've got 30 accelerators now around the world. So, it takes on average, so last year, CB Insights data, 7 years from getting VC funding. By the way, this is a kind of slight tangent, but really relevant. 7 years from getting VC funding to an exit. And normally to get VC funding, you're probably operating 2 or 3 years before that. So the likelihood is, if you're working on a business, then you're probably going to be working on that business for 10 years. So one of the reasons, seeing Elliot's thing this morning and him saying, actually, it's really important to kind of work out what your purpose is and follow that purpose, I fundamentally believe that. You've got to, I mean, yeah, so sometimes people say follow your passion. You need to have kind of proper strength at what you're doing. But if you do have that, then you're going to dedicate your next 10 years of your life. And the likelihood is you're going to fail. So actually, if you're going to fail, or if you win, then you're going to spend 10 years doing it. Do something that's important. But anyway, back to the kind of question, which is, we've only had 10% of the companies exit so far. We're okay with that because actually it's still early days. You know, we actually started 10 years ago, and actually most of the companies, the vast majority, the last 3.5 years.
And I'd also probably want to challenge those numbers too, because I think like that number is probably correct. The 2% that are super successful come accelerator programs, but my guess they would be focused around sort of like the top tier of accelerators, not the 1,000 million accelerators that feel like they're actually out there. And so I think there's also some level of concentration as well too. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I bet you it's concentrated around 5 or 6 accelerators where most of these winners are coming out of.
Is one of them 500 startups?
I would suspect so.
Okay, well, following up on that, there seems to be a slight accelerator bubble. It seems to be that actually accelerators, incubators are doing slightly better than startups themselves. Why should anyone start a startup and not just do an accelerator? You guys seem to be doing pretty well. So why not actually just become an accelerator and get the money and try to help other people do it?
I'm not necessarily sure that's actually the case. I mean, there definitely is an accelerator boom or bubble, depending on how you look at it. But the reality is that most of them are garbage, and most of them are going to die in the next 2 or 3 years. The economics of actually running accelerator are actually pretty garbage.
Yeah.
It's pretty horrible.
Don't run it.
Yeah.
Like if you really look at it, it's like you either overfund it, right, and then it's sort of you're burning money, or you underfund it, and then you actually can't help companies. So either way, you're just not going to do well. That's an unfortunate situation that most accelerator programs are. And actually, most of them are actually run by people who've never done startups either, right? So, or run by academics, or even worse, run by big corporates who are like retards, right? Or I should not use that word. Mentally challenged, who are mentally challenged in the startup space.
He's coming from Silicon Valley, so you guys know.
So I just think like, but Dave also, the co-founder of Fiverr also says this too. It's like, well, are there too many business schools out there too, right? You could also argue. So I think it's the same situation. Like you see some flight for quality in the long run.
So I think, the economics of an accelerator are a nightmare. So if you're thinking of starting an accelerator, don't bother. I'm paid a third of what I used to be paid. So I'm doing this for the love of helping entrepreneurs rather than because I'm getting any kind of return. I actually, when I started this, I was like, why are there so many startups? Why are there so many accelerators? Now my view is this is the way to create innovation that ultimately will make all of our lives better. Given that, I am delighted to see a vast number of startups and a vast number of accelerators. Even if the majority of both of those fail, I think it just moves us forward as humanity much more quickly. And so for me, clearly there's too many accelerators. If you're a company and thinking of going to an accelerator, and obviously we're in a kind of privileged position, but only go to one that's worthwhile doing. I mean, you're investing both your time and your equity into an accelerator. You want to get a return for that. You want a massive return. The best way of judging that is speaking to alumni and understanding whether they've got value from it. And don't just take the ones that we recommend you speak to. Speak to any of them in the portfolio and just say, look, is there proper value in actually doing this? If people have gone through an accelerator and they say, no, it's shit, then really don't do that accelerator. Yeah.
But could it be that some people just had a bad product and that's why the acceleration, it just wouldn't work?
Yeah.
That happens. I mean, the most important thing is basically do your homework and really understand sort of like can this, based on your biggest issue or problem or challenge, can this program actually help you in this? Because there's some programs that are very much focused on like bio or specific sort of vertical industries, and there's some that are generalists, but there's some that are better known for helping on the product side, and some that are better known for helping on the sales side, or whatever it is, right? And like really do your homework. It's kind of like, it's sort of like students who just basically go and pick all the Ivy League schools and just randomly apply to them. I'm not necessarily sure that's sort of the best strategy for actually like making this work.
So I actually have a friend in the audience who asked me a question. She actually applied to 2 accelerators. She got in both of them. And I think this can relate to a lot of you, which means how do you actually choose how long? What is effective? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 6 months? Is it, what is the actual great time for acceleration to make that move for that company to push it forward? Or is there a specific,
It depends.
magic?
This is going to be a crappy answer, but it just depends, right? Depends on their company situation and founder situation, depends on the program. For some where they're fairly advanced, maybe 2 or 3 weeks is just enough, right? And for other ones, maybe like a year may not be enough. It just depends, I don't know.
Yeah, there's different lengths of acceleration out there. I mean, all of ours are 3 months. I actually think that's a good amount of time. Where I don't necessarily think that works is where it's a hardware business. If you don't have if you're pre-product in a hardware business going into an accelerator and spending 3 months in the accelerator, you're basically waiting for the prototype to be developed. You're not going to get value from that. I mean, we've run over 100 accelerator programs. We've found that 3 months is an effective time to accelerate. We're aiming to get 18 months squished down into that 3 months. So for us, I mean, it was what Marvin was saying, it's actually kind of just come in, get massively accelerated, and then actually just be way ahead of where you would have been. That's for me is what the value is.
And then when they sign up for accelerators, what do you guys think is the normal share of equity that accelerators should get? Because the average is like 7%, but is that fair for 3 months of help?
Like I said, I think for a good program, that's cheap, right? But if it's a bad program, which most programs are, it's very expensive. But the range in general should be, like you see, it's like 5 to 7% is the norm. I think anything beyond that seems probably out of market.
Okay.
Yeah, and we say you should get at least that as a return, but actually the target should be 10x return. So you should see the value increase of your company to such an extent that when you're raising your next round, actually you should, that 6% is actually worth 10 times that amount of money at that raise. And generally speaking, that's what we see.
So I have one funny question for you, Marvin.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to Max yesterday, and he said if I mention corporate accelerators, that you might get a bit jittery. How do you feel about companies getting together with, for example, Techstars to create accelerators around the world?
I mean, if corporates want to waste their money, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I think, look, the reality is that most corporates are really challenged on the innovation front, and I don't fundamentally understand sort of why it's actually happening. I do think, the problem for most corporates is that they actually don't have a clear goal on actually, this is like what they call like a Hail Mary pass, right? Like, hey, if we go and do this accelerator, this is going to fix all our innovation problems, and that's actually fundamentally impossible. And so I think the expectations are sort of unrealistic on what they can actually do and actually receive from it. I think it's a worthwhile exercise when, it's better than nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think it's better than nothing, but I do think the challenge is more on the corporate side of their expectations on sort of what they're hoping to get out of it. If it's pilot projects, learning, then it's very, very valuable. But unfortunately, it's just unclear sort of what they're looking for most of the time. And that's why most of the time these things don't work.
So Max, why do you do it?
Well, I mean, why Techstars does it is we get written a large check. No, I agree with Marvin in terms. So corporations now, on average, in the S&P 500, you could in 1960 expect to be in that index for about 60 years. So people would have a lifetime career in one company. It took 14 years of this millennium for 52% of the Fortune 500 companies to disappear. And that's either because they've shrunk, they've gone bankrupt, or they've been taken over. So And that's getting faster, that change. So you're now in a situation where if you're the CEO of one of these large companies, you've probably got a 50-50 chance in the next decade whether your company's going to exist. And if that's the case, actually, a lot of this is coming from the threat of competition, both from incumbents, but also from new startups. So what large organizations need is structural innovation within their organization. So properly being able to start up or kind of acquire whatever. So I think there are actually 5 things that large companies need to do. They need to enhance their core business. They need to build new companies. They need to buy companies if they can't actually build themselves. And they need to partner. And the final one is then tracking the horizon, understanding what's going on. On the partnering, they can do things like corporate venture capital. They can do an accelerator. They can do hackathons. There's a whole portfolio of stuff. The problem is they end up thinking that an accelerator is the solution for all of their woes. And the problem then is it doesn't solve it, and they get pissed off, and then they get disappointed. But ultimately, the real problem is they're probably going to be out of business in 10 years' time. Mm-hmm. So that's why they do them. We can help them dramatically because we know how to run a corporate accelerator. There are some challenges with it. There are also some massive benefits for the companies that come in if there's a portfolio of corporate partners. But yeah, it can be challenging.
But in the end, if a startup would join a corporate accelerator, is that bad? Or does it, like,
So we run, take an example, we run a music one in LA with Sony Music, Warner Music, Sonos, Harmonix, and various management companies. There, you're basically, if you're a music company, you're getting exposed to most of the industry. That gives you an amazing opportunity for both biz dev and development, and also cash, potential strategic investors. So, we run out of Detroit, we run an automotive one with Ford and Honda and Verizon and various others. So I think there's huge potential value there. There's also a danger that if that's why you're doing it and it doesn't pay off, then you get massively disappointed.
You're done.
Yeah, and also you're potentially done. Yeah.
The consortium model is actually interesting versus sort of the specific company. We talked about that, but I like the consortium model because this is a high-risk, high-gain situation where if you get in and you actually get customers and you get investment or whatever out of it, it's actually huge for you, right? It really catapults your business. But if you get nothing out of this, that's actually a huge negative signal as well to the market. And so you're pretty much done, so it's high risk, high gain. Although, but that's also sort of the venture capital business, and that's the startup game is high risk, high gain. So it depends how you look at it.
So we're running slightly out of time. So I think one thing that when I sit in audience is, I always ask myself, like, how does this relate to me? You live in US, you live in UK. How, if I'm here in Bulgaria, in Sofia, I have a startup, what the hell am I supposed to do to either get my startup running, to get into an accelerator? What am I supposed to do to become global, to become a startup that works, but from a Sofia point of view, rather than from the US point of view or UK?
Both our programs are actually global. Like a third of my batch, out of 43, 45 companies, a third of them are actually international from all over the world. And we have one company, Claim Compass, actually a local company, was in our batch, I think like batch 19, if I recall correctly. So we find companies everywhere. So it's, and if you look at sort of, even YC is now starting to go global, right? Which is very different than what they used to do. Yeah. It's very new. And so that globalization is a reality on both sides.
So are you saying that anyone who's sitting right here can join your accelerator? Well,
actually, about 80% of my companies, or 80% of the people in my cohort are international. And kind of, our program starts on the 17th of July. We've chosen the companies already.
Hey, ours too.
Cool. I would say watch this space because it may well be that we've chosen someone from here.
Are you going to do the same, Marvin?
Yeah, I'm looking for companies. I'm always happy to talk to them. Don't pitch me, by the way, when I'm going to the bathroom, all right? This happens all the time when I'm here, but...
I hope message was received. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for having this talk. I love that you guys are from competing companies, but at the same time, you can sit here and talk about the future, which is awesome, and I hope everyone got what they wanted out of this. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thank you very much.